Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Berachot and Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Bet, halfway down, and the Limud of Amud Yomi for Chodesh Cheshvan has been sponsored by Shahab and Shenaz Rabbi for health and prosperity of their family, and also sponsored by Hami family, Lidu Nishmat Yosef Ben Alakasimha, Alakasimha Bat Rachel, and Aliza Tag Yosara Bat Chanuch Feivel. And Neshamot should have an aliyah. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
So the Gemara went through a discussion of whether or not halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. Is it halacha? Is it matin? Is it modim? Is it nir'in? 4 different languages of whether or not halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer when it comes to saying havdalah on a Motzei Shabbat. There happens to be a Yom Tov. I mean, Sunday is a Yom Tov. Usually this happens in Chutz La'aretz. In Eretz Yisrael, they have one day Yom Tov. Usually you don't have this for reasons beyond the scope of this talk, how the calendar works. But normally speaking, in Chutz La'aretz, you always have every year most years you have a Yom Tov that's on Sunday. Hence, you have a Havdalah between Shabbat and Yom Tov. So that was the discussion that we had, whether or not halacha is like a Eliezer, that you say it in Modim. Now, the Gemara at the end said, it's not halacha, it's not matin, it's not Modim, but it is nir'in. And who was saying that? Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar nir'in. That's Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Zera said, Amar Bizera, Nekotiv de Rabbi Chia bar Abba biyadecha. Hold the Shita of Rabbi Chia bar Abba in your hand. This is 10 lines up from the wide lines. Why do you have to hold like Rabbi Chia bar Abba? Because the Dayik v'gam yishmata mipuma demara. Because he was always very specific to do the quotation of what his Rebbe said exactly the way it was said by his Rebbe. And he had a nickname. They would tell him that he is like the Rachava de Pumbedita. There was a Chacham, his name was Rachava, and he lived in the city of Pumbedita. And he was like a recorder of his Rebbe. Whatever his Rebbe said, exactly that way, he codified the halakha that he heard from his Rebbe. He was very specific. Normally speaking, you have someone goes to shiur and says, what did the rabbi say? He was beautiful. What did he say? He doesn't remember. So even if he remembers, he's going to say it, paraphrase it in his own way. But then you have somebody, Rabbi Heinemann, I used to learn with him, he said, there was a fellow in Lakewood, when Rabbi Aaron Kotler used to give his shiur klali, was very long, like 2 hours plus, 2-3 hours. And it was always on Shabbat because he was fundraising for the yeshiva most of the week. So only Shabbat he was there most of the Shabbatot. He gave the shiur. I said, he didn't have a recorder. So the people who didn't chap, who didn't understand or couldn't make it, there was this person that had a photographic memory. And he would say the shiur over exactly the way Rabbi Aaron said that he would even cough at the place that he coughed. He said exactly like that. So that's a person you want to rely on. So says the Gemara, this fellow, this Chacham, Rechava de Pumbedita, he was such a person. The Amar Rechava, one example of this has nothing to do with our sugya. It's just showing how important it was for him to say it exactly the way his rabbi said it. And the Amar Rechava said, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, his Rabbi Yehuda said, Harabayit stav kaful haya. That in Harabayit they had 2 rows of itztava, of a bench around the whole thing. One, and then inside of it, another one. Itztava kaful haya. Now, you have to say itztava, not stav. But his Rebbe, for whatever reason, he couldn't say itztava, so he said stav, even though that's not really a word. But he heard from Rabbi Yehuda that word. And one of the rows of the benches was inside the other one. In other words, there was 2 circles of benches, one inside the other one. That's what he was trying to say. And he heard it this way from his rabbi, and that's exactly what he repeated when he said. So he was specific and careful to say it exactly the way he learned it from his rabbi. So what I'm saying basically that Rabbi Chia bar Abba also was like that. He was very careful to codify the halakha and the Torah that he learned exactly the way he learned. Great. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said, Ana lo hayida, ana lo hayida. Rabbi Yosef said, I don't know any of these things. Is it halakha, matin, nir'in? None of this pertains to me. Ela mid Rav Shmuel yadana. I know what Rav and Shmuel said. And this is, Rabotai, what we do here in Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi Gaon says in Eretz Yisrael, the minhag was differently. A lot of very interesting historic background of the tefillot and the difference of the tefillot between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. This is something that is a beautiful and complex talk for itself for some time, not in the shiur, but the nuschaot of the tefillah. Many people say they started with minim zedim. But what was the old minhag? Was it the minhag? Was it not the minhag? And when you look into it, you see that much of the Middle Eastern countries of Edot HaMizrach, for instance, the minhag was like the Sidur of Rav Sadia Gaon 500 years ago. And then little by little, every Sidur that they had a little bit changed the minhag, and we have the differences of the minhagim in tefillot the way we have them right now. But be that as it may, here also was one of those that in the time of Rabbi Gaon, the minhag of Eretz Yisrael regarding this halacha was different than what we do, but this is what we do now. Says Rabbi Yosef, this is what I know from Rav and Shmuel. Rav instituted a lot of tefillot, and this seems to be one of them in Bavel. The Takinulan Margenita beBavel. They instituted a beautiful jewel, which is a reference to the Nusach of Tefillah in Bavel. What is the beautiful jewel? What is the Tefillah that Rav instituted in Bavel? Says the Gemara, Vatodienu Hashem Elokenu et mishpete sidkecha. This is the Tefillah Vatodienu that we have. If you take a look at the Sidur of Yom Tov, on Arvit of Yom Tov, you have this insert that if happens to be on Motzai Shabbat, this is what you say. And this is basically the exact text that we have. Et mishpate tzidkecha, v'telamedenu la'asot chukei resorecha, v'tarchinenu zmanei sason. You gave us zmanei sason and chagei nedava because now you're davening at Tefillah v'Yom Tov. V'torishenu kedushat Shabbat. You also inherited to us kedushat Shabbat and kavod of Moed, uchvod Moed, v'chagigat haregel. And nevertheless, even though that you gave us Yom Tov and you gave us Chag and you gave us Shabbat, ben Kedushat Shabbat Kedushat Yom Tov Hivdalta, you have differentiated between the Kedusha of Shabbat and the Kedusha of Moed. They're both holy, but they're different. V'chagigat haregel, Kedusha Shabbat Hivdalta, v'ed Yom HaShavi'i misheshet yemei ha'maaseh kidashta. That you made Yom HaShavi'i, Shabbat Kodesh, different than all the other 6, regardless of whether or not they are Yom Tov, they're Kodesh or not. Hivdalta v'kidashta et amecha Yisrael b'kedushatach. You separated and you sanctified your nation with your kedusha. And then you say, Vatitenami. You go on with the rest of the tefillah of Yom Tov, and that's what Rabbi Yosef said in Bavel we do. He said, I don't know Rabbi Elazar, not Rabbi Elazar. This is what we do. This is what Rav and Shmuel instituted in Bavel. And of course, that's what the Torah and Shulchan Aruch bring for us. Says the Mishnah. Haomer, this is fascinating Gemara. Haomer al kan sipor yagiu rachamecha. Someone that in the text of his tefillah says, al kan sipor yagiu rachamecha, which means there's a mitzvah of kansi porki, kare kansi por lefarecha. If you're going on a way and you see a nest of a bird, a kosher bird, lo tikacha em alabanim. You cannot take the mother and the bird and the mother bird and the eggs or the chicks together. What do you have to do? Shalech teshalach et haem. You surely have to send away the mother. You take the kids, you could take. But the mother, you cannot take. Right? This is a fascinating sugya. We're going to discuss a little bit of it today. Bezrat Hashem, and then we'll see how much of it we could cover. So if somebody in the tefillah says, Hashem, you have even rahmanut, you have compassion on a mother bird, and karsipor yagiu rahamecha, and just like you have compassion on the mother bird, please have compassion on us. Beautiful pitch, right? Gemara says, what do you do with this person? Hold on, wait for it. Or if a person says, all the good things that you do for us, Hashem, we thank you. As if you do good things for us and you do bad things for us. For the good things, we thank you, right? For bad things, next time try better. Or the third thing, it says modim. When he gets to modim, it says modim more than once. It says twice, 3 times. Modim. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah. You hush him up. You quiet him down. Why do you quiet him down? It seems like he says good things. Right? Modim, thanking a number of times. Gewaldig. Or you say, Hashem, on the good things you do, we praise you. Great. Or you say, Al-Kansi Pori Agiu Rahamecha. Gewaldig, fantastic. What's wrong with it? Says the Gemara.
Sorry, this is during the Shmona Esrei.
This is during Shemona Esrei. Many Mefarshim say, if you are during the day talking and say it, it is not a problem necessarily. But if you make it official, that means that I decided that this is a right thing to say, and you put it part of your tefillah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then it's a problem. Says the Gemara, Bishlama, Modi Meshatkinoto. Let's work backwards. I understand why you would quiet him down if he says Modim. Because that looks like he has 2 different sources that he's thanking. He's saying thanks to one God, then he turns and says thanks to another God. That's the Persians actually used to deal with this historically in many other areas in Middle East. The Gemara talks about the Bavel of the time. They had this. Gemara in Sanhedrin says they had the Avodah Zarah called Hormiz ve'Ahuramiz, right? The God of good and the God of bad. Those who know the Zoroastrians, the Zartushtis, that was the religion before Islam came to Iran 1400 years ago, so 1300 years ago maybe, right? Everyone was Zoroastrian. That was the old thing of the Middle East, not just what's considered Iran right now, but around it as well. And Zoroastrians, they believe in this. They call it Ahriman, though those who know the Farsi better. Ahriman is Ahuramiz, same thing, and Hormiz is the Shaitan. So Ahriman Shaitan and Ahura Mazda, which is Ahuramiz. That's Ahura Mazda. That's what they call it in Farsi right now. So they actually had this belief, and the Chachmei Gemara had to deal with this, right? Because people would daven to this, daven to that. So he said, Modim, it looks pretty bad. So Meshatkino, that is injustice, is the Gemara.
But we say Hodu, Ana. It's the same thing, right?
No.
Why?
We don't.
We say.
That's completion of the same thing.
No, but we say.
Yeah, but that's every pasuk is a different thing, and each one of them is addressed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah, in the Mizmor of Mizmor LeDavid also you have 18 times that you mention Hashem's name. It's not referring to different Hashem. It's the same thing. But here you're saying Modim the same time. Not that you say the whole text of Modim. You say Modim, like Shema, we're going to get to it. If it's the whole pasuk or just Shema, details of which we're going to discuss. So says the Gemara, that I understand. It looks like you are thanking and bowing to 2 different reshuyot, to 2 different sources. The second case of the Mishnah, that on good things, Hashem, we thank you, which indicates on things that we're not happy with, we don't think is good. We don't thank you and we're not happy with what you do. Nami, that also I understand, first wide line, because it's mashma ala tova v'lo al hara'ah. It's mashma that we don't thank you on the things that we think is not good. Utnan, and there is a Meferish Mishnah, we have an explicit Mishnah. Later on, we have it in Daf Nun Dalet in Masechet Berachot, actually, when we talk about Berachot. Chayav Adam levarech al hara'ah, kishem shemarech al hatovah. A person is obligated to say bracha on even negativity, the same way we say bracha on good. When good things happen, you say hatov ha'metiv. When bad things, chalila, happen, we say dayan ha'emet. But you're saying a bracha still, Baruch Atah Hashem. Right? Dayan ha'emet. The Gemara says, in Latid Lavo, you'll understand that even the good, the bad, the quote-unquote bad things were really good. So on everything, you're going to say hatov ha'metiv. But right now, even though that our understanding is very limited and very capped, we still say a bracha recognizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the source of everything. So therefore, to say that we only say bracha, we only say a hoda'ah on good is not a proper Jewish hashkafa. So that also we understand, says the Gemara. Ela al kan tzipor yagiu rachamecha. What in the world could be wrong with saying, Hashem, you have compassion on the mother bird, please have compassion on us? My Tama. What's the reason? Says the Gemara, Peligi Batre Amurai. This is going to be massive. This Machloket Amuraim, I'm going to, maybe I can't control myself, maybe I'll say a little bit of thing over here, but this is going to be massive. Says the Gemara, Tere Amurai b'Ma'arava. In Eretz Yisrael, two Amuraim had machloket about this, right? Rabbi Yossi bar Avin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. Those are the two Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. Chad Amar mipnei shematil kinah b'maaseh bereshit. Because you are causing a kinah b'maaseh bereshit, jealousy in the creation. Because, wait a second, Hashem had compassion on the mother bird, that the emotions of the mother is going to be very much hurt if you take the children and the mother, and therefore the children are going to be taken captive in front of the eyes of the mother, and so on and so forth. So Hashem had Rahmanut over here say, no, don't do it. But then sometimes you shacht an animal, sometimes you do all kinds of different things. We don't always have this level of compassion apparently. So you're causing jealousy, so to speak, by saying this in the creation. That's one. The other one says, no, has nothing to do with kin'ah b'maaseh bereshit. Mipnei she'oseh midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachamim ve'enan ela gezerot. You know why? Because with your limited knowledge and limited brain, you are defining HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mitzvot to only be Rachamim. So Hashem, you said this mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan, and it's so beautiful, it's compassion of yours. So no, it's not compassion of Hashem. That's your limited brain. It's Gezerah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has 3,000 plus reasons. So to define something that is so much deeper on such a shallow surface level is a wrong thing. That's the second shita. Now, why is this fascinating? This is fascinating because, first of all, there is a Gemara in Masechet Ba'al Metzia Daf Lamed Bet. There's a whole discussion whether Sar Ba'alei Hayim is the Oraita or the Rabbanan. To inflict pain on animals, is it a biblical problem or is it the Rabbanan? This maskara of the Gemara there is that Sar Ba'alei Hayim is the Oraita. To inflict pain on the animals is the Oraita. By the way, it's very interesting. The Nodab Yehuda, Rabbi Haskell Landa, in Yoredea Tinyana, in Siman Yud of his Tshuvot, he was asked by a rich guy, can I go hunting? You know, back there, people for pastime, they had as compared to what it is now, this was a very healthy activity. They would go hunting. They had this large areas, and they would go with special dogs, hunting dogs, and so on. And they would shoot. They would shoot moving targets, living moving targets, right? So he asks him, says, "Can I go shooting? Can I go hunting?" So the Nodabi that goes back and forth, the different possible problems with this, which I'm not going to say all of them, but one of them is at the end, he says, it's Bitul Torah. What are you doing? You have to go to Amud Yomi. What are you doing? Wasting your time doing hunting. That's what he says at the end, right? But in the process, he also says, this is a thing of Esav, is not the Jewish, but in the process, he says, is it Sar Bara Hayim that you're inflicting pain on animals? And he has a massive chidush. He says, when you inflict pain on animals and you keep them alive, then it's a problem. But if you, in process of killing an animal, inflict pain on them, that's not the Isur he holds.
For no reason?
So, no, not for no reason, but he holds that this is a psychological reason. Maybe it is considered not a... I believe the Nodei Yehuda is not correct. From when you see it from one of the Rishonim, Sefer Chinuch, when he explains the mitzvah of shchita, he says, why do you have to have a super sharp knife, right? Chad vechalak. It is so sharp that the animal doesn't even feel it until after it's buried. Like, it is. One of my friends was a shochet. He's a shochet. And he does, gasa, even he does the larger animals as well. So the knife is like this big.
Wow.
Right. And he was in his basement once, sharpening it, fine tuning it. And he dropped the knife and it just passed by his leg and he picked it up to continue sharpening it. And he realizes that there's blood all over the basement. He realized he had passed by his leg. He didn't even feel it. Right. He didn't even feel it. And it was gushing blood. He got 55 stitches because of that incident. But the Maaseh, it is super sharp. And Sefer Chinuch writes, because when you, even if it's mutar for you to kill based on the Torah, it's Pasvik's parasha, it became mutar for Noach to have animals. Before that, everyone was vegetarian, right? But now that Noach saved, so to speak, the world, he owned them by saving them and sustaining them for the worth of that year. And therefore, it became mutar after the flood, that they should have kosher animals, or animals per se. Afterwards, the kosher laws came. But nevertheless, says the Sefer Chinuch, you have to minimize the pain even when you do shchita. Hence, chad vechalak. So that's perhaps what you see, not like from Sefer Chinuch or the Rishonim, not like the Nodab Yehuda Rabbi Cheskelanda, but be that as it may, that's just inflicting pain. Now, whether or not you could explain the mitzvot like that, Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim explains the mitzvah of Shluach HaKan. He says, because, why Shluach HaKan is like that? Because, says the Rambam, animal emotions is exactly like human emotions. Their sechel is actually different. They're not as sophisticated as us, which is actually not a plus over here. It's a minus because, for instance, the Chavot Yair writes why the Isur of Sar Ba'al Hayim does not apply to human beings. It says because human beings have a brain that could process pain and could make sense out of it, and you won't be hurt as much. In other words, the more sophisticated the brain is, the more you could control the emotions. But the animal, says the Rambam, doesn't have that, but has the same compassionate emotions to the children as a human being. And therefore, says the Rambam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has commanded us to be sensitive to those emotions of even the animals, and do not kill or take the children of the bird in front of it, or the mitzvah of otov be'et beno lo tishhatu b'yom echad. There's another mitzvah in the Torah: you cannot kill a parent and a child in the same day. You want to shecht cows, right? And this would become a very relevant thing in those 3 days that the Chazal call the days of Shechita. Basically, that a lot of people had to bring korbanot and so on and so forth. So you have to be very careful and earmark the different things to make sure that it doesn't happen. The mother and the son, for sure, because the father, oftentimes you don't know what it is. Is there yes, no, but the mother and the son or daughter, you cannot shecht in the same day. It's a mitzvah d'oraita, right? Rambam says all of this, the kansipor, all of them have the same reason, that you have to be compassionate, and this is the expression of Hashem's compassion. Seems to be exactly against what the Gemara just said here, right? Rambam, Mr. Gemara, right? That's for when you get upset and you bang the Moreh Nevuchim close before you read the next part, right? Rambam says in the next part, it says, oh, we learned the Gemara in Masechet Berachot Daf Lamed Gimel. Al kan sipor yagiu rachamecha meshatikin. Says the Rambam, that's only one shita. We don't pass it like that. It's machloket Amoraim, remember. That's the second shita. Second reason the Gemara gives. But Peligi ba'amorai b'marava. There's two shitot of why this is. And the first one is because matil kin'a b'maaseh bereshit. And Rambam says that's the halacha. Therefore, Rambam holds that this is not a problem. Now, this has a lot of other aspects of halakha when he discussed the mitzvah of kan sipor. According to Ari Kadosh, mitzvah of kan sipor is always there. Actively you do the mitzvah even, right? In other words, it's a mitzvah to go find kan sipor, right? I could assume that when it comes time for it, which basically is in the beginning, in the time of Pesach time, basically, when it's springtime, you probably have like a kan sipor WhatsApp chat, like, where is kan sipor? And on the other hand, there are those who disagree with this. They say, no, that's considered actually a isur, and only is mutar if you actually need the animal. You want to eat kebab, right? So you're looking for a pigeon to make shish kebab. And then once you're taking them, don't take them both. Only take the children. But if you don't need them, you're gonna go and say the Shem, and then you're just gonna take the eggs or the chicks and then put them back in. That's not a mitzvah. And when it's not a mitzvah, it becomes an avera. The Khatam Sofer speaks about this. Many others, Achloket of Chavot Yair and Khatam Sofer, and it's brought into the Tshuva in kan sipor. But nevertheless, this is just to show you that this is a broader sugya, much broader, and it's fascinating to see that this, because this is not like other mitzvot that just be machmir. You can't. If it's not a mitzvah, then it's mimela automatically an avera of zar bar hayim. So therefore, you have to be very careful. Rav Shammai Gross in his Shuvot, Shevet Akati, he asks a question and he doesn't answer it really. He says, is there a mitzvah of chinuch by kan sipor? You want to teach mitzvot to your kids, right? Tzitzit, tefillin, lulav, etrog, sukkah. How about kan sipor? Do we say that, well, when they grow up, they'll have this mitzvah, and therefore now you should train them to do it? Or do you say, wait a second, the 7-year-old, the 10-year-old, when they shoo away the mother and they take the chick, but they're not doing a mitzvah because they're not bar mitzvah. So automatically, when they're not doing a mitzvah, you're instructing them to do an avera. That hurts the feelings and the emotions of the animal, of the bird. I said, I don't know. He basically leaves it hanging. He says, I don't know if it's a mitzvah or an avera. So it's one of those things that you have to be mindful. But be that as it may, this is just scratching the surface of this, the depth of this Gemara, of what happens when you have al kan sipor yagiu rahamecha.
So what do we do today?
The Maaseh, we're going to have a shiur on it when it comes Nisan time, right? So says the Gemara, it's machloket. Says the Gemara. Now we spoke about different hasanim that went down to the Amud in front of different Rashi Yeshivot, and now we have someone that went down in front of Rabbi. Rabbi was the Rosh Yeshiva, and this Shaliach Tzibur went down to the Amud and is davening, and he started altering the nusach of the tefillah. He says, "Ata hastal kan sipor, you Hashem have had rahamanut on the kan sipor. Ata chus v'rahem aleinu, just like you have compassion for this bird. Please have compassion on us." Amar Rabba says, turns to Abaye and says, wow, what an amazing Shaliach Tzibur this is. We should hire him, right, for Yamim Noraim. Look at how he knows how to invoke the Rahamei Hashem. Abaye looks him in the eye. Abaye was a student of Rabbi. He says, Rabbi, what are you talking about? It's Mishnah, you have to quiet him down. He's doing the wrong thing. And the Gemara says, Rabba Nami Nachadud ila Abaye Hudabai. Gemara says Rabbi also knew the Mishnah. He wanted to test Abaye to see if Abaye is going to snap back and say this is the Mishnah. I want to know if he remembers the Mishnah. Okay. Another story of this Shaliach Tzipur that went down to the Amud in front of Rabbi Chanina. Amar, and he also altered the Nusach of the Tfilah. He says, Hakel HaGadol HaGibor VaHanora. This is what we say. Sheknes HaGdolah instituted this because Moshe Rabbeinu said this, right? These are the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. Hakel HaGibor HaGadol HaGibor VaHanora. But then this Shaliach Tzipur didn't stop there. He added his own. V'ha'adir, the powerful, v'ha'yezuz, v'ha'yarui, the revered one, v'chazak, v'ha'amitz, v'havadai, v'ha'nichbat, is going on and on. And Rabbi Hanina is waiting there, holding his thumbs, is waiting for him to finish. Once he finishes all the adjectives and all the midot, he says to him, he see him, when he finished, Amaleh, he says, Pshh. That's all you got? That's all you got? You finished all of it? Hashem has nothing more than what you said. Why do you have to say all of this? Anan us to say the three, Hakel HaGadol HaGibor VaHanora, and the three that we say, he loved Amrinu Moshe. If it wasn't because Moshe Rabbeinu said it in the Torah, and Sheknes HaGdolah came and actually instituted it, that should officially be said in the Tfilah, we wouldn't be able to say it. We wouldn't be allowed to say it. And he says, I'll explain to you with the mashal why this is absurd. And then you come and you start like enumerating different things that you think is the Shevach of Hashem. You know how childish that is? I'll give you a mashal. Mashal Melech Basar V'Dam is this king that owns countries. He created the Bitcoin. And he owns Tesla and SpaceX and Twitter. And he's mamash up. And this little kid then comes and says, pshh. This is such a massive king. He has 10 cents. How ridiculous that is. In the little brain of the kid, all he could take is a few cents or few coins. He doesn't understand the vastness of what this king has. Melech Basar V'Dam, she'ayu lo elef alafim dinarei zahav. He had millions and billions of dinarei zahav, of gold coins. And people say, wow, this king has dinarei kesef. He has silver coins. Bizayon. The more you say, the more disgrace you're bringing to yourself. This is a genai. Now you're not giving shevach. When you don't understand the vastness, the extent of something, the more you say, the worse it is. To accept that you don't understand what this person has is the best way to go. Say, I'm speechless. I have nothing to say. It's beyond imagine two people who are another example that the Gemara gives when somebody that's not big enough enters a machloket, a talk that they shouldn't, says when two things, their head is into the sky and surpasses the ananim, the clouds, to discuss which one is taller is foolish because you don't see the end of it. So what are you discussing? You can't grasp the level of height that this has. All you see is that's beyond the scope of your understanding because it's through the clouds. So it's the same thing over here. We say it because Moshe Rabbeinu said it. It's codified in the Torah. And Sheknes HaGdolah said it. Therefore, we said. Says the Gemara. This is an all-time famous Gemara. Everything is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu aside from Mirat Shamayim. In other words, a lot of things are predestined, like the Gemara says in Sotat Afbet, that when the child, the egg is created, so to speak, is fertilized, the child comes to this world even before the Neshama has been given. The Malach says, all the gezerot, this kid's going to be ani, ashir, tall, short, beautiful, ugly, rich, poor, all these things. And the Gemara says, Aval Tzadik or Rasha lo amar. One thing is left in his hands, and that is what you do with all the things that Hashem gave you. All of them are tests. The good things, being tall and handsome and rich, is a test. Being poor, short, and fat is also rich, right?
Test.
Is also a test. All of them are nisyonot, like Mr. Shalim says. It's back and forth is an isayah. What you do with that is in your hand. You got to be a tzaddik. You got to choose to be a tzaddik. And that's the parallel Gemara to that. Hakol bidei shamayim chutz mirat shamayim. Right? This was of 2 weeks ago. We spoke about the Rambam in his letter to Rabbi Ager about marriage. That maybe even marriage is considered Yirat Shamayim because it determines the level of the frumkeit that you're going to have, the level of religiosity of the family and yourself is going to be affected by that. So maybe that also is in your hand. And the concept of the shirt, the way we assume it, is probably, according to Rambam, not exactly 100% correct, and so on and so forth. But this is the Gemara. Hakol bidei shamayim chutz mirat shamayim shenemar, as it says, V'ata Yisrael ma'ashem elokecha shol mimach. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jews, you know what Hashem wants from you? One thing. All the other things he determines. What he wants from you, but it's in your hand. Ki'im le'ira. Only thing is the small thing. Yirat shamayim. That's all Hashem is asking from you. The rest of it is in his hand. So the Gemara jumps at this notion, not because of the Hakol b'dei shamayim plus mirat shamayim, but the Gemara says, wait a second. You just say, Moshe Rabbeinu says, the only thing Hashem wants from you, what do you think he wants from you? It's a small thing, just Yirat Shamayim. Well, Yirat Shamayim is mitla zutrata. Yirat Shamayim is a small thing. Atu Yirat Shamayim mitla zutrata. You think that Yirat Shamayim is a small thing that he says, what do you think Hashem wants? Only ki'im le'ira. But Amar Rabbi Chanina himself said, in the name of Rabbi Shlomo Yochai, En lo la'kadosh baruch hu b'vet gelazav ela otzar she'Yirat Shamayim. The only thing that is in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's treasure house, the only thing that he treasures, and it's the highest level, is Yirat Shamayim. It's not a small thing. It's the only thing we've got. It's the treasure of all treasure. It's not a simple thing. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Yirat Hashem yotzaro. Yirat Hashem is in the otzar of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Gemara answers, says, in legabe Moshe mitzazutahi. Yes, for Moshe Rabbeinu is a small item. Now, this is, of course, a can of worms. You have to now discuss, for Moshe Rabbeinu is a small thing. But he's talking to the Jews, right? So why is he saying? He's a Rabbi of the Jews. And he's telling them.
It's okay,
So what does that answer? If for Moshe Rabbeinu is a small thing, why is that pertaining to me, that for me should be considered a small thing? That Moshe Rabbeinu says, what do you think Hashem wants from you? Only Yirat Shamayim. That's something we have to talk about. Says the Gemara, the Amar Rabbi Chanina, again, another mashal from Rabbi Chanina. Mashal Adam shemachim menu kli gadol. If they ask you a kli gadol, a very expensive, very sophisticated vessel, and you happen to have it, v'yeshlo, domeh alav ki kli katan. It feels like a small thing because you have it. When you have something, when you have conquered something, it seems very small. But if they even ask you something very simple and you don't have it, then it sounds like a big thing. So it really depends on the mindset, the Gemara says. This thing that people make a mountain for themselves, it's not a mountain necessarily. If you set yourself to do it and you do it, people who have finished Shas many times from childhood, right? Because their father said, or the standard was yeshiva 50 years ago in Eretz Yisrael, that every Bachur had finished Shas. So for some mysterious reason, whoever entered this yeshiva within the 3 years, next 2-3 years, they finished a new Shas. This was the standards. So it was nidmele davar katan. The Gemara is saying is up here in your mind. If you do it, and if you set yourself to do it, it looks small. If you make it a massive mountain in your mind and you don't have it, then it looks like a big thing. You tell someone, come to Amud Yomi, 6 o'clock, they want 6 o'clock. Rabbi, don't even talk to me before 9 o'clock, right? But once they start coming 1 week, what's 6 o'clock? Baruch Hashem, right? So that's something Gemara says, but Hashem will continue this in the days to come.
I didn't understand.